So, this is going to be extra weird because I'm set up, I'm recording this with one camera and one microphone over here and doing a Facebook Live with another microphone over here. So if I look back and forth, that's why. And hopefully you can hear me and all that. Because one of these is going to go on YouTube and one is just me babbling at you. So, for starters, I wanted to give a big thank you to all those who did the book order thing. Yeehaw. I did notice that I didn't actually give a cutoff date of how long that deal was going to go. So now I'm just arbitrarily making up. I'm going to have it go till Tuesday, which is the 30th, I believe, if I can do math, which is rather iffy at the moment. That's 4 signed copies of the Most Dangerous Superstition for $50. I'm going to eventually stick in the comments below how to pay for that. If I get payment by Tuesday, I will do that. So I wanted to say everybody who already ordered, I may have gotten one order this morning. Other than that, everybody's have already been shipped out. Sometimes the mail sucks. If you don't get yours by, say, Monday or Tuesday, let me know. And thanks to all of those of you who flung in donations to help Alyssa out. I think we raised like $800 after her car died, which she did not ask for, and she was like, I'm independent, I can do this myself, and so I'm helping in spite of her. So she's not a beggar, she's very responsible and hardworking, but I wanted to help her if I can. So thanks to all you who helped her on my behalf or something. So that deal goes to Tuesday. And I wanted to again mention that I'm going to be at the Music and Sky event. That's what it's called, Music and Sky. Although I won't be there to do music or to do Sky. I will be giving a talk there. And I thought I'd briefly mention that. I'm going to include below in the description how to get tickets to that. It's in Southern California, October 13th to 16th. But I wanted to do a live rant today. First of all, I want to see what this does to the Facebook algorithms because they're actively suppressing me at the moment. They say so. This isn't like a crazy conspiracy. They say we're moving you lower in people's feeds. So I'm seeing if this does anything different. But the topic of my talk at Music and Sky is neither music nor sky. It's going to be love isn't all you need. And there's sort of a tangent to that topic that I wanted to do in a brief rant today that's related to that, but not really the topic there. There are, there's different personalities that focus on different things. And there's some people who are very nerdy and intellectual and they're into math and all sorts of like very specific sciences. And then there's a lot of people who go by instinct and intuition and feels being a super technical term for it. And I think it's important that people try to sort of have a balance between those two. And a lot of times if you meet someone, you can tell they're more of that or more of that, and not necessarily a balance between the two. And it can be a challenge. And something that I find a little bit frustrating with people in the movement, voluntarists and anarchists, and humanity in general, but these particular people, is that a lot of people think that Feelz functions as a replacement for thought, and that you can just go by instinct and feels, and that's fine, and that's all you need. And it isn't. It isn't. And the thing is, what matters most is being a decent human being. And that is sort of in the realm of love and feelings and all that stuff. That's what matters most, being a decent human being to other people. I would much rather somebody be scientifically illiterate and not all that good at logic, but decent to other people, than really good at logic, but a nasty... boobity boob, things I can't say on Facebook, because that's what matters most. However, and what my talk's gonna focus on in Music and Sky is how many people who focus on the love and all, sort of the hippie-ish generation that not generation, but that general type of person thinks we just need love and we need to be in tune and all on the same wavelength and all that stuff. And no, that isn't enough, because the nasty people in the world, this is basically the topic I'm going to be covering there. The nasty people in the world don't usually try to use your evil to empower themselves. They try to use your good to empower themselves. So the people running for office don't say, put me in office and I'll do nasty things. They say, put me in office and I'll do all these lovely, wonderful, nice, benevolent things. And if you don't understand intellectually the tricks and what they're doing and propaganda and persuasion and all that, your goodness is going to make you fall for it. And it's going to make you inadvertently empower the worst people in the world. So that's the general topic of what I'm going to cover at Music and Sky. But there's sort of a side issue to that I wanted to talk about, because I see it in so many people that I don't know how to say this and make it sound all that nice. They think that their opinions on scientific matters are valid because their feels say they are. And that's not how analytical scientific stuff works. It's how intuition and emotions work. It's not how, for example, math works. Math doesn't care about your feels, and it doesn't care about your instincts. And to get good at math, just sort of feeling like you're one with nature won't make you good at math. You have to actually learn math. You have to use your part of the brain that's the analytical, that's the computer, the calculator, the intellectual that figures out reason and logic, the cold, hard side of things. And I know a lot of people don't like to focus on that, and a lot of this has to do with how utterly crappy the education system is, which is by design. But it's frustrating to see this strange phenomenon that, it's already frustrating to see it in the general public. And to me, it's extra frustrating to see it among voluntarists, because they're the ones who sort of, I'm hoping, are going to help fix the world, when they don't seem to understand that it actually takes time and effort and focus to understand scientific things. Hearing about it and seeing one video or reading an article and then saying whatever you feel about it isn't how reality works. It's not how science works. It's not how logic works. And I don't mean the crap that they stick the label of science on, in the mainstream, because there's a ton of that has nothing to do with science. They call it that. And the reason they get away with calling it that is because so many people don't understand science. They think, oh, well, the authority said it, it must be science. No, appeal to authority is the opposite of science. Trust the science is the opposite of science. Like, it's not about trust. It's not about belief. It's literally about evidence plus logic equals, rational conclusion. So I'm not talking about the garbage they spew. But I see so many people who don't come to their conclusions on logical or mathematical or scientific things based on an actual understanding of those things. And which is, you don't have to. You can be guided by your emotions and just not focus on that. But in this culture, there's this weird phenomenon now that I remember this not being the case in my lifetime, where people think their feels equal a valid scientific opinion. Like, they think, well, my opinion about that factual thing, not like what music do I like, because that's inherently subjective and stuff. Yeah, what you like is what you like, what art you like, what people you like. That's you, that's an emotional thing. But when it comes to like things having to do with the physical reality, the physical sciences, your feels don't determine what's true or not. And I think a lot of people don't seem to know that now. They don't seem to know that there is nothing inherently valid about your opinion. Actual scientists understand this. The fact that you think something means exactly nothing. Like, your thoughts about some scientific topic should be entirely a result of an examination of the actual evidence and applying logic to it, not the fact that you have a feeling about it. Now, there are, even in science, there are intuitive things, and some of the most insanely brilliant scientists and inventors sometimes just say, well, then I just pictured this thing in my head and then I figured it out and it actually works. But they didn't do that from scratch. They did that after having a really thorough understanding of the related actual science and how things work. And so it's frustrating to see that boil over into the freedom movement, where so many people think that their feels determine physical reality, and they just don't. And it's the reason, I can just have my pet peeve that people suck at science, which is partly because my dad was an awesome science teacher who actually taught people how to think and figure things out. He was known as Doc Science for a gazillion years. And so I sort of take it personally when I look out at the world and go, oh, the whole world needs my dad to still be alive and teaching all of them, because they all suck at logic. Not all of them, but a lot of the world, and a lot of the U.S. that thinks we're all advanced. We're the best country in the world, and we suck at logic, and our education system is utterly dreadful. But the real problem isn't just, well, I wish people knew this more. It's that if you don't understand the basis of those things intellectually and logically and scientifically, you're a lot easier to manipulate and control. And you're a lot easier to deceive, and you're a lot easier to scare, as demonstrated by the past several years. Lots of people being scared of something that, if they had any understanding of actual science and logic and looked at the evidence, they'd go, I don't need to be scared of this. Statistically speaking, this isn't scary for me. Like, maybe other people need to be cautious to some degree or another, which, even that, whatever. But it demonstrates that if people are guided by their feels, they can be led around by their feels. If they don't really have an understanding, because if they can be scared because they don't have an understanding to counter the lies and deceptions and manipulations of the worst people in the world, they're going to fall for stuff. And, some of the people in the movement fell for stuff, but it isn't just a matter of specific deceptions. It's a matter of, there is something far more concrete in understanding than there is in belief. Like, if you believe something about, let's say, somebody has some conspiracy theory about something or other. Now, if it's based on, well, I sort of have a hunch that, okay, you're allowed to sort of have a hunch. And I'm all in favor of people being suspicious as hell of those in power. And every time something bad happens, you should probably think, who had something to gain by this? Like, maybe it was an accident. Maybe it was just some person being a random psycho, but who had something to gain with it and doesn't make sense. But a lot of people just go by their feels, and then they form conspiracy theories based on their feels instead of actually applying logic and going, okay, wait a minute, what do we actually know? They claim this and this and this, but this doesn't match. And how would that explain this? Like, going through the scientific process as if you're actually an investigator. And these days, most people, when they talk about investigating something, or they talk about, I did my research, what they mean is they watched some videos on YouTube and were emotionally persuaded by the confidence of whoever was presenting it. Well, that's not how logic and science work. And the guy who made the video might be right, or he might be wrong. But if you don't have the logical foundation to actually assess whether they're right or wrong, and you're just guessing based on your feels, you're way too easy to deceive. And you can be deceived into believing things that actually, even if it's some conspiracy thing, it actually serves the people in power accidentally. And there's a number of different ways that can happen. First of all, if you believe that those in power are in control of everything, absolutely everything that happens is totally by design, and it's calculated, and they make everything happen. Anything that happens anywhere was their doing. Not only are you scaring the crap out of yourself, you're actually helping with their agenda to try to throw out the message that resistance is futile. You will be assimilated into the Borg. And no, those in power have botched up a lot, especially in the last couple of years. And if your Feelz just say, no, I think everything's a conspiracy and they're in control of everything, instead of looking at it and going, if they were in control, that wouldn't have happened, and that wouldn't have happened, and that would have happened. Yeah, they tried that, but then it backfired. They got away with that and that and that. Like, if you can't analyze it from an objective standpoint, like logically, then it's easy for them to scare you. And if they can scare you because they're evil psychos, if they can scare you and you can pass on that fear to other people, you're actually helping those in power. And if you have theories that don't really make sense and are kind of silly, and there are a lot of those out there, and you spread them, that also serves their agenda, because they can go, look how gullible and stupid these people are who are spreading this stuff. This is, truth seekers. That's what truth seekers look like. I mean, they do that. I know that I've seen them do that. The establishment will say, well, if you do this, then you probably believe the earth is flat. Guess why that statement works? Because a bunch of people who don't understand the science or logic, their Feelz were persuaded. They were duped by con men like Eric Dubay, and they fell for it, and they repeat it, and they spread it around. And the outcome of that is either you're duping other people into believing something silly, or at least you're making truth seekers look silly to anybody who actually understands basic science and logic. And either way, that's however much you believe in freedom, you're accidentally helping the opposite, because you rely so much on your feels and your instincts, and you haven't developed your actual logical understanding of things. And it's sad. It's sad to watch, because this is how the bad stuff happens in history. I've said this a million times. The nastiest people in the world were cheered into power by good people. In all the nasty regimes you can think of, the Third Reich, that's the most famous, even though it's only third in body count. But Mao and Stalin, they were cheered into power by people who were duped by lies and persuasions, and almost always against something bad. Like the people who rose to power was like, we're against that bad thing. And the people were like, yeah, we're against that bad thing too. Let's put you in power. And they didn't have the logic to go, we're against that bad thing, but we're pretty sure you're a bad thing too, and we don't want to replace that bad thing with a new bad thing, please. Because they didn't have the logical understanding. They just had the feelings. And you can see how much tyrants manipulate people's feelings. And by the way, the Jones Plantation covers this quite well, I think, by demonstrating how if you are run by your feelings, you will be run by tyrants. If you don't have an intellectual, logical brain to go with the feelings, then you're way too susceptible and you're way too vulnerable to whatever manipulative BS the tyrants want to throw out there. So, and I just see a lot of people in the freedom movement doing that and being that. And it's kind of frustrating to watch. And it's, I'm going to say this again. It may not sound very polite. I remember a day when if you didn't know something about some scientific subject, you at least knew enough to shut the hell up and learn something, instead of throwing out opinions based on nothing as if they're automatically valid because you feel them. And so I wish more people would pause to learn stuff instead of flinging out opinions that they on things they don't know anything about and don't understand anything about, and they're completely unfamiliar with the relevant evidence. If you don't have the evidence, if you're not actually familiar with the evidence, and I hesitate to mention examples precisely because there will be a wave of people who are completely oblivious to evidence and driven by their feels, but I'm going to mention this one anyway. People who think dinosaurs weren't real don't have any idea how evidence and logic actually work. And there are those people. And I see them, and there will no doubt be some posting, if not here, then under my YouTube video mentioning it. No, dinosaurs aren't real. Here, look at this video from Eric Dubay. And they're so ignorant of the actual evidence. I was into dinosaurs when I was little, which doesn't mean they were real. but it means I looked at it and I learned about it. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people have personally participated in many, many hundreds of dinosaur digs where they dig up the fossilized skeletons of dinosaurs. And so when somebody comes along and says, no, there's no dinosaur skeletons, they just put together like cow bones, or like the claims explaining it, trying to explain it, are really weird and ridiculous, and they obviously come from people who have no idea what the actual evidence is. And they say, well, they guessed wrong about the shape of this dinosaur early on. Yeah, because they had like 3 bones, and they were like, how does this go together? And they made a crappy guess, and they were wrong. And later they said, like, iguanodon was a fine example of one of the earliest things. So they were just guessing how it went. And then out of the blue, they found like 14 iguanodon skeletons in their actual position. So you can see how they go. And, oh, that's how they go. And as somebody who grew up running around in the woods, and I used to collect bones, I can say mostly what you find is individual bones. Every once in a while, if the timing's right, you'll find most of a skeleton. Very rarely will you find the entire skeleton, unless there's still like an animal around it holding it in place. And it's the same thing with dinosaur bones. You might find a scrap and a scrap and a scrap, and every once in a while, whoa, here's the whole freaking skeleton, maybe minus that foot, and part of the skull got broken, and there's this missing, but you can still see the thing. But when people, and again, this is just an example because who cares about this in particular, but when people say, no, there was no such thing as dinosaurs, it's like the amount of evidence, like raw, real evidence that I've seen with my own eyes, and thousands of others have seen, that you have to just dismiss and pretend doesn't exist just so you can feel superior, because you didn't bother to use the intellectual side of your brain to examine the evidence and apply logic. You just, oh, I heard a thing and my Feelz said that'll make me edgy and cool, so I'm going to believe that and repeat that. That's not how anything works. That's not how anything works. And even when there's a real conspiracy, which there are plenty of, if you're someone who believed 57 things that were totally bogus and provably bogus, then it's going to be the boy who cried wolf when you get around to saying, by the way, they also do this. Yeah, they do that one, and that one, and that one, and that one, but no one's going to believe you now because you literally fall for everything. And unfortunately, even a bunch of people who consider themselves scientific, they mostly do the appeal to authority and deferring to the experts, which is also not how science works. So you have 2 groups of people. I'm very much oversimplifying here, but it's frustrating that it can feel like this. One that falls for absolutely anything. You can name any conspiracy you can imagine, no matter how ridiculous, and they'll believe it. And the other side is like, no, there's no such thing as conspiracy. That's crazy. It's like, wait, you think bad people don't conspire? What's wrong with you? Of course they do. And they've been caught doing it more times than I can count. But if you don't have the intellectual side, then your feels are going to determine, I'm going to believe that, or I'm not going to believe that. Neither one of them based on evidence and logic. And I see that a lot in the movement and just in humanity in general. And my dad would be rolling over in his grave. If he had a grave yet, we have his ashes. I'm going to bury him in a place that's illegal to bury him at his request. Just his ashes. This is final act of civil disobedience. I guess it isn't exactly his act. Anyway, that's a random tangent. But yeah, it's frustrating, and I'm probably not going to change how anybody thinks with this video. So mostly this is just venting and ranting. But I would encourage you, if there's something you believe, each thing, examine it and look how much of that belief is based on what you feel and your instincts and all the things that aren't actually evidence and logic, that's just a hunch. And, I have a bunch of hunches too, and I'll say, well, I don't know, but I suspect this, if it's something that, like, I don't have the freaking evidence, but here's what my guess would be. But I talk like that, not like I absolutely know what it is. If I don't have the evidence, I don't know what it is. And like an example is the moon landing. I don't know that happened. My guess is that it did, but I haven't bothered to look at the evidence. If I look at the evidence, I may go, oh, of course it did, or oh, of course it didn't, depending on what I find. Haven't ever bothered because I don't really care. But But even something that basic and fundamental that half the world is like, of course it's true, and the other is, no, it didn't, it was totally fake. I don't freaking know. I never looked into it. I don't know that I'll ever care enough to look into it because it doesn't matter to me. I know the shape of the Earth, and I don't have to believe NASA for that. I know how evidence and logic works, and I can prove it myself, and have done so many times. But anyway, so I would ask you, go through the things you believe in and see which ones are mostly just sort of instinct and feels, and see which ones you actually have the raw evidence that you can confirm, not, well, somebody on YouTube said that this happened. Well, that isn't you having evidence. That's somebody else saying that they have evidence, which maybe they do and maybe they don't. And these days, since you can fake almost everything, you need to keep that in mind. But I'm going to end with this. When people come to anarchism by way of Feelz, it's easy to drag them away from anarchism by way of Feelz. I'm not going to mention any names here, but some of you have seen the debates. If you felt like government is bad, I don't like government. Okay, good. Like, valid enough feeling. And then you saw something and you were like, oh, things went bad over here. There was drama. Maybe we do need government. If you don't logically understand why government cannot be legitimate, then you can be scared or swayed back into believing the same ridiculous superstition because you didn't take it down using your intellectual brain. You took it down using your feels. And the problem with feels is they can change very easily. You can be persuaded, you can be deceived, you can be manipulated, you can be scared. All these ways to mess with people's feels. But if you actually have the evidence and the logic, none of the feels stuff affects that. Well, I know that this and this and this, and because I've seen it myself, and therefore this, that makes sense. That's logical. Nothing's going to break that. And so if you have a belief system based on feels, well, yeah, that was redundant. Because if you have a belief system based on logic and evidence, it's not a belief system, it's an understanding system. Because belief kind of implies you're taking it on faith rather than you frickin' know it because you know the evidence and you apply logic, and of course that's the conclusion, and nothing's going to change that. And so you will be a vulnerable, easily swayed reed shaken by the wind. Getting all biblical all of a sudden, even though I'm not Christian. If what your beliefs are based on is feels and stuff and intuition, and then you really feel this, and then, oh, it turns out that was wrong. No, it looks stupid and feels stupid. Well, like, take time to find out if stuff is actually true before you say it. Because that's another way that they can tear you down, is make you believe. This is something the Clintons actually did more than once, which is a clever move, is literally make up a lie about themselves, let it spread around, and then prove that it was a lie. And so all their critics jump on board because they feel like it. They feel like, yeah, you're bad. This must be true too. Somebody says something bad about you. It must be true. And then they arrange it in such a way they can easily prove that that particular thing wasn't true. And people go, oh, this actually shows up in the Jones Plantation, the novel version. Yeah, I don't even know if that's in the movie. And then they're looking stupid because you fell for something. And by the way, there's a million evil things the Clintons have done. I'm not saying they're good people. They're freaking psychos, but at least they were good enough to do the propaganda a little bit. But I would just caution people, try to use more of your logical brain if mostly you're guided by your feels and instincts, because your feels and instincts can get you into trouble. They can be wrong. They can make you look stupid, and they can make it easy for the worst people in the world to manipulate and control you in a way that ends up causing you to do things that don't actually achieve what you were trying to achieve. They achieve the exact opposite. So I guess that's all I will say about that. Anyway, that's enough ranting for now. I will stop ranting. So book deal till Tuesday. 4 copies for $50. I will have to add the description to this video and to the one on YouTube of how to do that. And thanks to all of you who either took the deal or some of you just donated outright to help Alyssa out. That was awesome. Thank you very much. Now go learn stuff. Give your Feelz a break and use your intellectual brain a little bit. Grouchy. I'm going to go yell at a cloud. Have a nice day.